Afternoon, Afro friends and family. Welcome to another edition of Afro News at Noonish. We're going to be running down some weekend headlines that took place. We're going to be talking about news that broke late last week. There's so much going on in the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, in case you're not local. And then there's a lot going on nationally. So let's get into it. All right, Miss Megan Sales, our business writer, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so I first just want to highlight an event that the AFRO is hosting this weekend. Obviously, we know during the COVID-19 pandemic, funeral directors had a very hard time. They had to deal with an overwhelming amount of deaths in their communities as well as from their colleagues. They also struggled to obtain PPE. They struggled to obtain vaccines. And so on August 6th, the AFRO is hosting Honoring Our Unsung Heroes, which is an event to honor our local funeral professionals. The celebration is going to take place at Valley Mansion by Martin's in Cockeysville, Maryland from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And you can snag your tickets right now on afrotix.live. I just encourage everybody, even if you can't come to the event, to just consider, the important role that funeral directors play in our communities, especially in the Black community, and just make sure you're thinking about them. And if you come across them, just, tell them how you appreciate them and the work that they do for you. The second story I just wanted to share today is obviously about the strike that is going on in Hollywood right now. Our actors are battling the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers after contract negotiations came to no resolution in July. Actors are really concerned about two things. The first thing is just fair wages. Every industry is struggling right now with the cost of living, and a lot of actors have actually come to the strike and talked about how it's not just about, fair wages in this industry, but industries across America who are trying to deal with this high cost of living brought on by the pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine. The second concern that the actors have currently is about the use of AI in film. So AI, artificial intelligence, is already used in films for visual effects, but now actors are worried that producers are going to be copying their digital likeness and using it in future projects without consent or compensation. So we have a story on afro.com right now featuring some comments from some of the actors in the union, as well as some comments from an AI company that works with production companies. And they kind of talk about how far AI can be used in film. It's not, right now, we're not at the point where we could have movies made with no actors on set, but that person really goes through how AI can be used. And I know, Ashley, you had some comments about some of the protests that's been going on in DC over the past week, and if you want to share a little bit about that.
Yes, so SAG-AFTRA has been having protests across the country. I recently just saw one in Sacramento, California, and this past Tuesday on July 25th, they met at Black Lives Matter Plaza right in front of the White House, and they headed to the Warner Brothers Blue Beetle screening at the Motion Pictures Association. And so they were there from 5:30 to about 7, just passing out information and leaflets on exactly what's going on and exactly what you talked about, which is jobs being compromised by AI, which is a huge issue, not in this industry, but in industries that range across a wide span. And so that's something that I'm hoping that they are able to make a lot of progress on. As we see the Barbie movie with actors like Issa Rae who have joined the strike, they're gaining a lot of momentum. And so I hope that a lot of progress comes from this. Speaking of progress, we can also look to RFK Stadium, which will now be hopefully changed through the DC government in association with the federal government through the Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium Campus Revitalization Act. So hopefully the federal government and DC government will sign this 99-year agreement, which will allow for mixed use of development on site, including a potential new stadium that will serve as home for the Washington Commanders, which is our NFL football team. They recently just sold from Dan Snyder to Josh Harris, who paid a record $6 billion for the team. And so many of them are excited to begin their new journey, hopefully in DC, as many people have also protested about that because they didn't want the team to be moved out to Maryland. Speaking of that, the DMV has also been affected by extreme storms and extreme weather over the past few weeks, many of it due to climate change and, it being extremely hot. So as we know, that can cause a lot of rain. So this past weekend on Saturday, there was a huge storm which had flying branches, trees fell on homes. A man in Virginia was actually killed and businesses and churches had to shut down. I know my church, New Bethel Baptist, had to cancel service on Sunday morning, and many others were facing the same type of of obstacles to overcome. But thankfully, or unthankfully, due to COVID, virtual services were able to commence, and I know a lot of people were still able to connect. So that's a little bit about what's going on in the DMV. Tashi, I know that you had an update on a trial that's going on in Baltimore. Did you want to share more on that?
Yes, for sure. So for the last 2 weeks, I was honored to cover the high-profile case of the July 2022 killing of Timothy Reynolds on behalf of the AFRO and with our charm intern, Kyra Moore. Reynolds was 48 when he approached a group of squeegee boys, sorry, while swinging a bat at the intersection of Light and Conway Street. Ex-BG worker Tavon Scott Jr., who was just 14 years old at the time of the incident, was found guilty of 3 of the 4 charges. He avoided the first-degree and second-degree murder convictions, but he was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter, use of a firearm in a violent crime, and possession of a firearm as a minor. Throughout the trial, you could feel the pain coming from both families. On the day of the verdict, we were packed into a small courtroom with little to no space left between both families, and respectively, they held hands, they wiped tears, and they braced for the verdict. After the verdict, you could even hear intermittent sobs coming from Scott's mother, who was eventually walked out of the courthouse with a tear-streaked face of shock. And the prosecution heavily relied on dash cam footage of the incident and CCTV surveillance videos to peg Scott as the shooter throughout the trial. But because it was awkward and angled and grainy, there was a lack of direct DNA evidence on the handgun that was used to kill Reynolds. And there were some holes in the story as well, coming from the prosecution, which was presented trying to connect the evidence of the killing to Scott. It all made it possible for there to be conversation about a mistrial. And Scott has not yet been sentenced, but he could get up to 35 years with all the charges, according to Theroux, who is the Reynolds family attorney. So there definitely was no true winner here, but to learn more about the case and what's next for 16-year-old Tavon Scott Jr., head over to theafro.com for more.
All right, thank you for that, Tashi. I'll pick up here since we are discussing Baltimore news. We appreciate you going to cover the trial. I know that there were a lot of points where it was very heavy emotionally, covering that, looking at the video, and just hearing both sides of the story laid out. So definitely look at afro.com and check out Tashi's coverage of that trial if you haven't already. Also, just continuing with that, unfortunately, the Mexican Navy has reported that they've located the capsized boat of Captain Donald Lawson. This is coming from the Associated Press. The capsized boat was located about 410 miles from Acapulco, which is the city where Lawson was last heard from. Earlier this month, they had reports that he left Acapulco, he had contact with his family, but then shortly after leaving, his family lost contact. And so unfortunately, they have found the capsized boat that he was on, but there's no life raft in sight. And there additionally has been no further contact with Lawson. So sending prayers to his family, his friends, his loved ones, because that's a very sad story. Lawson is from the Baltimore area. So we just want to, again, send out our prayers and thoughts to the family as they deal with that. On a lighter note, Baltimore did celebrate a birthday over the weekend on July 30th. Baltimore City turned 294 years old. All right, celebrations took place across the city, but most notably at Rye Street Market in South Baltimore. Thank you to all the people who helped us celebrate 294 years. All right, arts and culture. We're going to continue with that. Aria, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so some headlines that I saw this weekend that really caught my attention. As you guys know, Elon Musk is now the owner of what was Twitter, but has since updated itself to X. So a few weeks ago, we had some updates regarding the many antics he kind of has going on with his social media app. First, he was putting limits on not how much you can tweet, but the amount of tweets that you can see. Of course, you have to pay for verifications, but now Twitter isn't even Twitter, it's X. So if you guys have the app on your phone, if you use the social media platform, you'll see that it automatically updated itself. I was really hoping my phone wouldn't have, but it has. So it no longer is the Bluebird logo. It is now a black square with an X in the middle, and quite literally the app is called X. There was some controversy regarding if it could be called that because somebody else owned the name, but I guess he was able to go through with it. From what I can tell, the layout's the same, the use of the social media platform is the same. It's just no longer Twitter. In addition to that, I did see a headline earlier today noting that TV personality and therapist Ayanna Van Zant's daughter, Nisa, had passed away. There's yet to be any reports regarding how she passed away, anything of that sort, but they are asking that you respect the family's time and their space during this difficult time. So our prayers definitely go out to them. And then to end on a lighter note, R&B group Blackstreet had a street named in their honor in their hometown of Paterson, New Jersey. This came after them being in the music game for a very long time, as well as, despite their success continuously being involved in their hometown of Paterson. So Blackstreet officially has a street. So congratulations to them.
Thank you for that coverage, Aria. All right. As you can see, the Afro is covering a range of topics. Make sure you check out afro.com. If you have something you would like us to cover, something you would like us to come out and do a photo page on or write a story on, make sure that you are emailing us at editor@afro.com, or you can email me directly at ataylor@afro.com. Make sure you check out all of these stories. They are already up. If you have not already followed us on social media, we're on all the platforms. We're on IG. We're on X, I guess is what we're saying now. We also have a Threads. We're on Facebook, so make sure you like, follow, and share. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Afro News at Noon.